Welcome back to What's It Worth, everybody. I'm Owen H. Happy New Year. Hopefully this year will be better than the last. This is an attachment video covering the rest of the Alien Romulus review that I wasn't able to cover last year. In which, speaking of last year's video, I'm terribly sorry that came out in such piss poor quality. Because it was because of the playback, problems I was having. Even then, I had to go back and re-edit it because I went over the 15-minute time limit, and I was like, damn it. And speaking of the characters, I will agree with a lot of people that, yes, the British accents was kind of unnecessary in the film. And speaking of accents, even though I love the movie, and that was the best one I saw, the one thing that drove me fucking crazy about this movie was Beorn. It's not really much that he was an asshole. I mean, clearly he was an asshole character that I don't think a lot of people liked. But it was the fact that his accent was so thick, you couldn't understand a fucking word that he says. What made it worse was like his words were so muffled and so conjoined and he was talking so fast that it was like you can't even understand a word that he said. I mean, he's gonna sound like this guy when he's like super old. I put this kid in subtitles because I couldn't understand a goddamn word that he said in the entire film. Speaking of Beorn, I read these posts from TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and I'm going to clear this up in this video because clearly it's a misinterpretation brought on by people who have watched way too much Game of Thrones, and here it is. They theorized, or they hinted, that Beorn is actually the father of Kay's baby. First of all, that's fucking disgusting, because Beorn is Tyler and Kay's cousin. Plus, incest is probably like the last thing that Ridley Scott, Disney, or the creators of the Alien universe would ever want to throw in a film like this, ever. Second of all, they did make it a point in the film that Beorn and Navarro are actually really close, like boyfriend, girlfriend. Because he was freaking out when the facehugger latches onto her and he's desperately trying to pull it off. And then, of course, he and Navarro are holding hands when they're about to leave, and Rook tells Andy they can't leave. And then he becomes overly protective and he zaps Andy. And even when they leave, they're holding hands. So it shows they're actually a couple. Now, in the part where Beorn covers Kay's mouth and they're pretty much near the cocoon, I'm going to clear this up right now. When he's looking at her, that's not intimacy. He's basically telling her to stay put, stay quiet, do not move, I will take care of this thing. And when he places his hand on her face, that is not a loving touch as much as that's an assurance touch. Is his way of saying, everything's going to be okay, I'm going to go deal with this thing. And when Kay is holding his hand, she's basically giving him two signals. Don't go near this thing, and or be careful.
True, Kay did say that the father of the baby was some asshole. Beorn's an asshole, but then again, the whole freaking colony down there is full of assholes. The film also hinted that Beorn, like Navarro, are one of the very few people that know that Kay is pregnant, so Beorn is actually being more protective of the only family he has left, which is why he zaps out the alien. Plus, if Navarro knew that Beorn knocked up his own cousin, not only would she dump his ass, but she and Tyler would have beat the living shit out of him until he was dead.
So, there's my point. That's what those signals mean. That does not imply incest. Beorn is not the father of the baby, period. So get that out of your psychoanalysis. Dismiss all the comments. Another thing about Beorn that drove me nuts is the alien strikes out his eye. He's on the ground. He's got acid dripping down all over him. Clearly the kid is not that much shocked, just rolled the fuck over. I mean, Jesus. I mean, how dumb can you be? I said that in theaters. I'm like, roll the fuck over, dude. One of the pluses about this film I really loved about Romulus was the fact they bring Ash back. Well, technically he's not really back. It's basically it's the same kind of model, but it's a different character. His name's Rook. And just the fact that bring Ian Holm back, even though he's not really in the film because he died 3 or 4 years before Romulus was put into production back, it was awesome. That was the one thing I did not expect out of this movie. And the mastery that was put into them controlling a puppet with the digital face when he crawls over to the computer to check on the the condition of the ampules that he's also protecting. I was like, wow.
Even looking further on Facebook, I was actually surprised they actually still use miniatures in movies. I thought that was kind of an obsolete method. As you could tell from the Corbelline model that's the size of a golf cart, they use the action figure of Ripley to show the scale. And even when Fede Alvarez stands next to it, I'm like, wow, this thing's huge. So it's kind of cool they're still using the old school method of miniatures and only use CGI if
also
necessary.
Another thing that gives this movie a big plus would be some of the little musical tropes that they use from the Alien trilogy. The 20th Century Studios logo kind of fades out like the Alien 3 logo, which I thought that was so cool. And of course they have some musical cues from the original Alien. There's 2 of them. When Rook is revived, and then when you see the xenomorph, what's left of him dangling from above the ceiling. Plus they used a slight musical cue from Aliens, the jump scare themes, for when Kay's being rescued out of the hive. So this is the spoiler I didn't want to give away in the last video. And this involves Isabelle Marquette's character, Kay. Of course, I covered when she was pregnant and all, how that built tension in the film. I was sitting there going like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, throughout the whole movie. Because what I initially thought was going to happen to her was I thought they were going to recreate Lambert's death using her, but make it so much more gruesome, like so graphic, and like they were going to show everything. And I was sitting in my seat with going like, oh my god, I think this is it. This is it. I just remembered there were parts of the movie that I had a hard time sitting through. And then when the alien impales her through her back and coming out through her shoulder, I was like, and hoists her up to take her to the hive, I was like, okay, that wasn't so bad. I didn't want to give this away because the movie was still in theaters and I was still working on it. But you know what? Since the movie came out in Blu-ray and DVD, I don't give a shit. I'm going to cover it. So, Isabelle Marquette, in the movie, she was in the hive and she was bleeding to death from her encounter with the xenomorph. And there's these ampules that Andy protects, given to by Rook, which they're derived from the black stuff or pathogen from Prometheus, which they're sucked right out of the face huggers that they have in the labs. And they got the impression that the compound had regenerative quality. Looking after her baby, she injects herself with it. And right off the bat, I was like, I know exactly where this is going. So then, fast forwarding to where she's in the cryo bed, the alarm goes off, rain opens out, which her uterus has mutated into a cocoon, and that's what pops out of her body. So the pathogen affected her just a notch where she heals, like in her wounds, but the rest of it affects the baby and her uterus, in which she ends up giving birth to the most terrifying and the most unnerving monster in the entire film, the Offspring. That creature caught me by surprise, and I'm glad they didn't advertise this creature too much because holy shit. When I said in the video that my body was like jelly, that creature was exactly why. They tacked on the best monster for last, and what made this creature so terrifying was how it moved and how it took its time, and the the tension and the dread built up to this thing. I was like, oh my god. I remembered in theaters when it was crawling towards Kay because she's lactating pathogen out of her nipples. How it's like hunched over its birth mother to like breastfeed off her. The whole time, no lie, I just couldn't sit through that part. I was just like, oh god. I was like this. Like I just couldn't watch the screen. I was so terrified because clearly whatever this thing's got in mind, I didn't want to see it. I was freaking the fuck out. I was like, look, if there's some disturbing cannibalistic moment that's going to come on, I don't want to know. And then she comes back up and the thing's a full-grown adult and it's feeding off of its mother. I just went like, oh, that's not so bad. But it's fucked up enough because when you take a closer look, first, Kay doesn't have blood on her arms, but then when you see it feeding, she has blood oozing down her arm, which gives you a perfect enough image to kind of get the gist that this is not a clean breastfeeding process. And if you also look closely, I didn't notice this when I saw this in theaters, but if you look closely as it's feeding, it's growing a tail out of its body. And what makes this hybrid so fucking creepy is the fact he's grinning. I mean, it looks like, I think he's supposed to snarl, but it looks like he's smiling at his victims, like he's enjoying all of this. And the eyes, it was like, and it makes you go, ugh. Like, it was so creepy. Now, I can agree, yes, I wasn't crazy about the fact they went with an engineer look of the hybrid, but at the same time, I was like, it gives it a really, really, like, super creepy edge that makes you go, ugh. Now, a lot of people had complained that, oh, they ripped off Alien Resurrection. And I'm like, first of all, fuck Resurrection. I already covered that movie in my previous videos. I'm not going through it again. The hybrid in Romulus is 1,000 times better and way more terrifying than Resurrection's hybrid. And the craziest thing about The Offspring was, I don't think one part of that thing was CGI. Except for maybe the eyes and the tail. But the rest of them, it was a 7'7" high school basketball star who was that tall in a suit and makeup. No bullshit. And this kid was like, he was such a big sensation, they actually asked him to be in this film. And he went, okay. And because of that hybrid in the movie, I love the TikTok and the Instagram posts that I kept seeing throughout where it said, if you're pregnant or breastfeeding, do not watch the last 20 minutes of the film. And it's like, yeah, I could see why. And it was like the hybrid scared me to death that bad. That's why my whole body went cold and was like shooken up on the way to the car. I mean, that's the effect that creature had on me. And yes, I'm not sure if a lot of you noticed, but Fede Alvarez does have a cameo in this film. They basically did a mold of Fede Alvarez's head, his entire face and all, and they did a dummy with the back of his head all hollowed out. What? I lost me bright. I remember when I got this movie for Christmas, I never stopped watching it, and that's pretty bad, because as much as that movie was so messed up, I enjoyed it because it was exactly what I wanted out of an alien film. It was terrifying, it was different. Alright, so I've covered the rest of my Alien Romulus review. I still give it a full price rating. I still say give this movie a chance. So until next time, I'm Owen H. Have a nice day and Happy New Year's. Whoa.